Hi everyone. So this is the consolidation lesson for Samba and Preludio by Esperanza Spalding. Now, this is going to be quite a long one, so I can't edit these if I make a mistake. So it may stop halfway through, and then I might do another one if I make a silly mistake. So for this lesson, what you're going to need is the consolidation worksheet, which is a double-sided sheet with all sorts of questions on based on the elements that we've looked at. You're going to need the analysis pages from your folders with the large boxes that we complete for each set work. It would probably be useful for you to have the laminated music card from the front of your folders, which has all the sort of basic information about harmony and all the keywords, etc. You're going to need your Esperanza Spalding score and your Pearson notes. So those are things you're going to need for this lesson. So if you want to pause now and make sure that you've got all of those things, then please feel free to do so. Right, so first things first, like we do when we're together, we're going to do our keywords quiz. So let's start off and make sure that everyone is confident using these terms. So here we go. So a bossa nova. Anyone? Put your hands up. Only joking. So bossa nova is a fusion of samba, a dance style from Brazil, and jazz from the US. So it's basically a slowed down version of samba. Next, melismatic. So melismatic is the opposite of syllabic. So it's more than one note per syllable. So this is to do with songs that have words that we can then describe how the words are set to music. Next, tempo rubato. So robbed time is the literal translation from the Italian. This is where the pulse or the tempo can be flexible. So it's quite often done by pianists or possibly a singer with one instrument accompanying. Syncopation. So here we're talking about offbeat rhythms. Okay, so this is quite often in Latin American music, you will have a lot of syncopation in there. Triplets. So here we have 3 notes in the space of 2. Okay, so in the keywords quiz video, I've given a sort of detailed description of that for you. Next is extended chords. So we know that a standard chord is the root, the third and the fifth of the scale. And then we can extend that by odd numbers going by 7, 9, 11, 13. Remember, we don't go to 15 because that's the same note as 1. A broken chord doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. What it is where the notes of any kind of chord are played separately rather than all together at the same time. Then we have syllabic. This is where we have one note per syllable, which is what we have a lot of in this song in particular. Next we have, sorry for that, next we have monophonic. So going for monophonic then, this is a type of texture where you have one line of music on its own. Put my phone on silent. Next, or lastly, we have a coda. Okay, so fittingly, a coda is an ending section. So there we are. What you're going to need to do now is, if you haven't completed this sheet already, this consolidation worksheet, a picture of it is on the screen there. you can now pause the video and work your way through. I suggest you have your score and your Pearson notes to help you with this, because it does reference different bar numbers that you need to sort of locate different things. Then when you are ready, you can resume playing the video and I will go through the answers. So have fun. Okay, so here's the sort of top part of the sheet. If we look at tonality then, so our key signature has two sharps. So if you'd used your laminated card to help you with this, two sharps, remember each key signature has a major and a minor key that could be the key that we're talking about. So those keys would be D major or B minor. So remember, these are what we call relative keys. So from the major key, i.e. D, you would count down 3 semitones on the piano keyboard to get to B. So that would be your relative minor. And of course it works in the opposite way as well. Now, looking at the vocal part in bar 4, which of these two keys do you think it's going to be? Now the answer here is B minor. The reason for this is that in that first bar, our singer is singing a broken chord. Remember, the first melody there in verse 1 is based on broken chords, and she is singing a broken chord of B minor. Okay. The next question: why is this appropriate? This is typical. The minor key is typical of a bossa nova. All right. So that's basically the tonality of the piece. It stays in B minor throughout, and we can find that because we can see the outline of the broken chords. Now, instrumentation, I'm going to go through the first question, and then as long as you've used the notes, the Pearson notes, to add a bit more information just for your own understanding of the 3 parts, then that's fine. Okay, so the 3 instruments involved are female voice, acoustic guitar and acoustic bass guitar. But how many performers? Now, this is something you need to understand, is that there are 2 performers. So Esperanza Spalding herself is the singer and also plays the acoustic bass guitar. Another performer provides the acoustic guitar part. So even though there are 3 parts, she is performing 2 of them. Okay, so like I said, as long as you've written something about each of the parts, each of their roles for the 3 other instrumental parts, then that's great. So moving on to the bottom half of that first side. So structure, is there an introduction? Yes, there is. It's bars 1 to 3, so it's just the acoustic bass guitar on its own. Number 2, is there a coda or an ending section? Yes, there is. That's bar 105 until the end. Okay, so coda, ending section, bar 105 to the end. Number 3, are there any parts where the voice isn't singing? The answer is yes. So we have a monophonic introduction with just the bass guitar. We also have, later on in the piece, the guitar solo, the acoustic guitar solo, where there isn't any singing. Tempo. So the introduction has a free tempo. What does this do to the feel of the passage? Now, a free tempo, as opposed to tempo rubato, means that rather than just being flexible, there are no rules left anymore. So it means that there is no real sense of pulse, and that the player can really play around with it as much as they like. Then, next question, what word describes the tempo of verse 1? That would be rubato. So tempo rubato, robbed time, it means it's flexible. Okay, now, going back to our previous thing about instrumentation, there being only 2 performers, the reason this works is because during verse 1, it's just Esperanza Spalding performing, because it's just the female voice and the acoustic bass guitar, so she can easily achieve tempo rubato, this flexible time, slowing up and speeding up in different parts just as she feels, because she's doing it, she's accompanying herself. Then, what happens to the tempo at bar 19? Now here we have a fixed tempo, so rather than free or rubato, we've now got fixed tempo. It's faster, and it's what is described as a bossa nova tempo. Okay, so it's the sort of standard speed that a bossa nova will typically go at. Okay, so that's tempo. Now, moving on to meter. So remember, meter is to do with time signature. So how many different time signatures are used in this song? Now, normally, you would just have one. But in this song, we've got 3. Okay, the main one is 4/4, so 4 crotchet beats in bar. Why do you think the other time signatures are added? So the reason that they're added is because they're like sort of extension bars. The composer decided that they wanted to have this number of notes at this particular point, but didn't want to interfere with the 4/4 tempo. So they've put in these extension bars of different lengths. And then the final question on meter there, which other piece that we've studied did this? Well, Killer Queen did that, if you remember. Killer Queen was in 12/8, so 4 compound beats per bar. But every now and then, towards the end of a verse, they'd put in a 6/8 bar to add in an extra 2 beats so that the right syllables landed on the first beat of the next bar. Okay, now we've got melody. So, how many different melodies are used to create this song? That would be 2. Where are these ideas heard? Okay, so the first melody is verse 1 in the vocal part there. So bars 4 to 11, because there is some repetition in there, and it's based around broken chords. Do 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 do. Okay, so it's all there's no conjunct or stepwise movement there. It's the broken chords used to create that first melody. Now the second melody can be found at bars 23 to 34, and this is a much more conjunct stepwise melody. Do 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 do. Okay, so it's a much more stepwise flowing melody, no real leaps involved there. Okay, next question. Now have a look at the final verse. What do you notice? So in the final verse, we have these 2 melodies combined. All right, so the vocal part will sing the second melody, da 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 da. The bass guitar, okay, that she's also playing, plays the first melody, do 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 do. Okay, so we've got those 2 melodies that have been heard individually throughout the song, now combined in the final verse. So, as I've said throughout these videos, because this is a vocal piece, we can use 2 extra terms to describe the melody that we can't use if it was just an instrumental piece. And it's to do with the description of how the words are set to the music, and they are syllabic and melismatic. The one that we would use to describe the melody of this song would be syllabic. And the reason for that, the reason that it is syllabic, that she's chosen that, is because she's got a lot on her plate during this song. She is playing the bass guitar, which is, playing some quite difficult parts. She's also singing at the same time in a language which isn't her first language. Remember, she sings in 3 languages, but her first language is English. So it's a lot harder to do something that's sort of melismatic and lots of notes per syllables, and especially because she's got the rubato tempo as well, trying to keep in time with herself and trying to do melismatic vocals would be very, very hard. Okay, so then that final question there on melody asks you what the range of the melody is. So find the lowest note of the melody, the vocal melody, and count up to the highest. All right. So if you do that, you should find that you've got about a sixth or a seventh in each phrase. Okay, now moving on to rhythm. So this is a sort of fill the gaps exercise here. Verse 1. Most of the phrases start with a rest. So the first little phrase is on the beat. Do 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 do. Okay. Yeah. This, combined with the use of triplets, creates a lot of syncopation, meaning offbeat rhythms. The most complex rhythms in this section can be found in the acoustic bass guitar part. Then for verse 2, compared with verse 1, this verse uses longer note values. Okay, so the tempo doesn't necessarily change. In fact, the tempo gets slightly faster, but the note values used are longer than in verse 1. Okay, then we're on to harmony. Would you describe the use of harmony as simple or more complex? And I would describe it as more complex, because most of the chords are extended by adding thirds on top of the existing chord. Okay, so that's where we get the 7, 9, etc. Find an example of a diminished seventh chord. Okay, so if you remember back to when we were at school and we looked at the harmonies and the different types of seventh chord, a diminished seventh chord can be found in bar 35. Then find an example of an altered chord, so that's where the 1, 3, 5 isn't quite as we would expect. And that can be found in bar 44, where we have a chord with a flattened fifth. Now, the last point on this sheet, the key of the song is B minor. So we've got a B minor scale there for you. Now, find an example of a chromatic chord, i.e. a chord that does not belong to this key. Now, in bar 27, we've got a chord of C major, and in bar 28, we've got a chord of F major. So if we look back to that scale there, okay, we can see that a C in B minor would be a C sharp. So a C natural, C natural major chord would not belong to the key, so it wouldn't be diatonic, it would be chromatic. And then an F major chord wouldn't fit because in B minor we have to have F sharp. Okay, so bar 27 C major, bar 28 F major. Okay. So, moving on then. If you have your score out in front of you, it would probably be quite useful at this point. So, take a look at the notes used to create the two halves of this verse. What are the similarities and differences? Okay, so what we're doing here, we're just having a quick in-depth look at melody, and I've put some examples here just so that we can talk through it. Okay, so if we're having a look here, so we're comparing the first bar here with this one, then this one is exactly the same as that one. This one is slightly different, but that's only because there's just a slight delay in the start of the phrase there. Here, third bar, we've got that F at the end, but here it's slightly delayed and put over into the first quaver beat of the fourth bar. And then that's roughly the same sort of outline as that one. Then we've got this bar here, which starts on an F, whereas here it starts on an E, so it's just ever so slightly different. we've got the E in the last quaver of that bar. Then if we go down here, yeah, roughly the same notes, a slightly different rhythm. Now, here, we've got the last two bars here. It keeps going down. So remember, each of these broken chords, this one starts on a B, then we go down to an A sharp, A. We'll look at that in a bit more detail in a second. So this one, do 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 do. Whereas this one just keeps going because then it leads into this. So this one has kind of an unfinished feel to it because it then leads into the second part of verse 1, whereas this one has a much more finished. And again, we land on our B, which is the tonic note there. All right, so that's some of the similarities and differences between the first and second half of verse 1. So pretty much, in terms of the notes used, it's pretty much the same until we get to that last couple of bars. The rhythms are slightly altered because obviously you have to take into account the number of syllables that you need to have in each bar. Moving on. So if we look at this sheet here, two questions for you. Number one, what word can be used to describe the way the melody has been created here? And number two, can you spot the pattern? Okay, we've been through this all already, but this is just a bit more of a visual explanation of it just to help you out. Okay, so the word that we can use to describe the way the melody has been created here is broken chords. All right, so we've got the B, the D, the F sharp. Okay, that's a B minor chord with then the G above. Okay, then we've got A sharp, C sharp, E, G. Okay, which is a seventh chord. Then we've got the A, the C, the E, the G. Again, seventh chord, the A and the C have gone down to naturals. So each of these is based on a broken chord. So the notes of the chord played individually. The second question, can you spot the pattern? Okay, so if I identify these notes here, have a little look. So there's the first one, then this one, then this one, then this one, then that one. We've missed out that one because it's the same. Then this, then this. So the two words I'm looking for, now here we have a look at it. I've jumped the gun. Here it is on the keyboard. So we start with a B, then we go to an A sharp, then an A, then a G, then an F sharp, then an F, then an E. Okay, this is what we call a descending sequence. So you can see that it's going down each time. So the root of each of those broken chords is going down almost by a semitone each time, apart from we miss out a G sharp in there. Okay, but it's pretty much sort of semitonal, but it's definitely by step. And it's a sequence because it's the same sort of pattern, but repeated at a different pitch. Okay, so it's that broken chord pattern, but moving down each time. So hopefully that's a sort of good visual representation of a descending sequence for you. Okay, so some questions then. What differences can you identify between verse 1 and verse 2? So here is verse 1. Here is verse 2. Okay, so as we've said before, verse 1 is based on this broken chord pattern. Okay, so there's a gap in between most of those notes there. Now, if we look at verse 2 here, so this is from sort of bar 25 onwards, we can see that we've got some notes repeated and then most of the notes are just moving by step. Okay, stepwise or conjunct if we want the posh word. Okay, conjunct movement between the notes, whereas this is slightly more disjunct, okay, because there's a gap between each of them. Now, using your scores, I'd like you to have a go at comparing bars 23 to 38 with 39 to 54. And I want you to try and work out what technique has been used here and where we've seen it before. Okay, so the answer to this magical question is that bars 39 to 54 is a repeat of bars 23 to 38, but with a changed ending. Okay, and we've seen this before at the end of verse 1. So if we compare the first half and the second half of verse 1, which we did if I go back, a long way back. There we are. Okay, so remember we've had pretty much a repeat all the way through here, but these last two bars, this has an alternative ending for it to sound finished. Okay, and if I flip back. Sorry, there we go. All right, then look at the shape of the melody. Okay, so looking at the notes and how they move up and down in relation to each other in bars 23 to 26. Then look at the shape of bars 31 to 34. And what do you notice? So what happens is at bars 31 to 34, we have another sequence. Okay, so in verse 1, we have a descending sequence, bar by bar, but this is a 4-bar phrase. And this time it's repeated, but it's a fourth higher. So rather than moving by step, it's jumped up a fourth. Okay, there we are. So next slide. Right, so we're now looking at, sorry, just get my papers in the right order. Here we have bars 34 and 35 is what I really want you to look at here. And where we've seen this idea before. Do, 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 do. Okay, that is the sort of the ending section of verse 1. All right, so this little bit here, da 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 da. But then we've got do 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 do. Okay, so my next question for you is compare 34 and 35, these two here, with the next two bars. And what is this another example of? And I hear you all shout at your computer screen. It's another example of a descending sequence. Okay, do 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 do. Do 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 do. So it's all pretty much the same. Yeah, in fact, it's the same rhythm, exactly the same rhythm, but starting rather than on a D, starting on a C. Okay, so it's another example of a descending sequence. Now, that's kind of me done for the time being. What I'm going to do now is you are going to need your sheets from your folder that have the big squares that we fill in for each of the elements of music. Okay, and I have 1, 2, 3 slides to cover all of the things that you need to write into those boxes. And I will leave them on the screen for about 10 seconds each, but you're going to need to pause them so that you can write in everything that you've done. I will stop talking now, but just to say that what you should be doing after you finish this is to be annotating your scores. If you happen to have the right colours based on the colour chart I gave you at the beginning of the year, then great. If you haven't, don't worry too much. But it is very, very useful when it comes to revision for you to be able to follow the score with the recording and see all of these features happening as we go through. Anything that I've covered on this PowerPoint video thing, if you want to go back and see anything that I've circled or discussed, you can write them in your scores afterwards as well. So what I'll do now is I'll stop talking and I'll put all this up so that you can fill in your big boxes. Here we go. See you later.